Hey folks, Sin here. Today we're doing something a little different. So, I've been thinking a lot about these videos, um, talking to a lot of people on Discord, some in Reddit, and I wanted to ask and start to talk about the question, why do we play? For me, Magic has been there since, I was 11, 12 years old. Um, it's been something I grew up with, and I've watched grow myself. Watch its evolution, watch it transform from this fledgling game that people didn't didn't know. Um, when when you asked if a store had magic cards, half the time you got a funny look into this powerhouse of a game, a social community, and a moneymaker. So it's been very interesting to watch that change over the last 20 some odd years and how I've changed as a person as well. When I was a kid, magic was something that stoked the imagination from a child's point of view. You look at the cards and you fall into the world more. You imagine flying the dragon, not just playing it. You imagine casting the fireball for real. You imagine leading an elven army into battle. So growing up with a game like that has transformed and grown, is something very special. It gives you a special connection and perspective about where it came from, what it was, at least to you, to your friends, to the people you played with, to the people that didn't know it, and what it seems to be to people now. In my last video, I touched on an idea that MTGA in particular has provided access to this wonderful game. And that's true, it has. At the same time, I also mentioned that because of its design and the digital nature of a game like this, it it essentially isolates you, your friends, the people you're playing with. Much like what I'm doing right now and talking. All we're doing is looking at a couple of cards on my webcam, which we'll get to in just a moment. what I think the promise that MTGA has is for people like me to reopen that world of possibility, imagination, connection with others who love this game and have loved it for a short amount of time or decades. And whether you've just found it or like me, grew up with it, everyone is welcome. It's a truly beautiful game because it's really not a game. It's an experience. That sounds a little culty, but it's not. What it what I mean is the the best attributes of Magic are not necessarily the actual game. What Magic encapsulates is connecting people, ideas, thought, community, imagination. All of these things come together in many different ways. Whether you're building decks, finding a deck, going to a store, playing with some friends, sitting down at a kitchen table, teaching your son, daughter, spouse, whoever. It's about a personal interaction and having fun. The vehicle is a game. The goal is for people to connect and have fun. So if you look at MTGA, part of that mission is, to me, somewhat broken. The way that the game is built in the digital landscape, the way that it's positioned, the modes and formats available, these don't let you directly connect with anyone. If you log into MTGA and play a game, whatever that game is, there is no direct way to interact with your opponent beyond simply playing the game. So, in part, you are interacting, but it's a shallow representation of what the game is really about. And that's not to say that MTGA is worthless or not worth playing or using, or that I don't like it. That's not true at all. I think it's been something that has brought me back to a community that for a while, because my friends moved away, life took many turns, I forgot about. Not forget because I didn't want to play Magic. It was just life happens. You get older, and priorities change and things happen. You just kind of forget about things. So MTGA helped me get back into that. And for me, that led back to things like Discord, Reddit, connecting with people, communities, discussion. The most fun I've had is around community. The community run tournament we did, taking people's random ideas in Discord for decks, cards, whatever, building them, and then just playing them while they watched. It was a blast. Made me feel like a kid again. And that wasn't anything directly related to what MTGA itself is doing. It was just a vehicle, much like I related earlier. So if we can connect with each other, we can help others understand the real value that this game has, the communities that are out there, the fun that you can have in so many different ways with this game. It doesn't exactly matter what MTGA is doing because it's just a vehicle. So I wanted to talk about that because I think that is a very important message that isn't discussed with this game. And the longer the game goes, it seems like the focus is more and more on the introduction of new content, specifically cards. So this is a card game. In general, that makes sense. However, it feels lately like it's more about how much can we add to the game content wise, how quickly can we do that, rather than does that make sense, does that make a good game, does the gameplay experience make sense. The client obviously has issues. Recently, there's been quite a few we've all been dealing with. And it's unfortunate that instead of seemingly investing in things like the infrastructure, at least visibly, the focus eternally is on new sets, surprise sets, secret layers, new product. And hey, a company needs to make profit. That makes sense. There was a very interesting GDC talk that Mark Rosewater did back in 2015 or 16, where he talks about 20 lessons he learned in game design over the years. It's an excellent discussion. I'll put the link in the description. Uh, but if you watch that video and you've played this particular game recently, it seems like they're not playing from the playbook anymore. Or the people who would play from the playbook don't have control. So this isn't a video to be all doom and gloom, but I think it's important to acknowledge the environment and explain what I'm trying to do, why I'm doing it, and what the game means to me. All of the things I just talked about make me more passionate about trying to offer tools, ideas, things to discuss, ways for people to help connect with each other. Because for someone like me, um, and I'm sure many others, life has been pretty hard recently. And everybody has a story. We don't need to get into anybody's stories, but just obviously for the whole world, it's been pretty rough recently. So it's important not to lose sight that there's a whole lot of living in life along with just staying alive. And a game like Magic and the vehicle of MTGA can help bring in, enjoyment. One of the things that I've seen firsthand with some of the people in our Discord is just the way the formats are set up, the structure of the game, the at this point what feels like almost constant rollout of product. It's almost backbreaking for some. And when they take certain design decisions and how the game overall is made, uh these people, a lot of them can't build decks, and that's fine normally, except if the game is designed around the competitive ladder, at least visibly. At least that's what you're kind of funneled into. And a large chunk of the most popular content out there is also geared around the ladder competition. It makes it feel like the only way to play the game is to do those things. That's not the case. It's just not. And it's made me sad. I've developed some friends in the community who have burnt out. Understandably so. But that doesn't have to happen. And there's a lot of things to do in MTGA, in Magic, with communities far outside the ladder or even within the ladder, so you don't burn out, so you don't feel that pressure. Some say, like bladder anxiety. If that's how you feel, you shouldn't be doing it, or you should be changing how you're doing it, because it's not a job normally. And if it's something that is a professional career, then there are ways to approach that too. But anything that's making you feel like that needs some evaluation as far as what you're doing and how you're doing it. So let's pull it back from the plank we're walking down, and let's talk about the two cards in view here. So going back to why do we play? Like I said, I started a long time ago. I played pretty much through middle school, high school, after high school. I had some breaks in between where different parts of my life kind of came up, and then I just couldn't play for whatever reason. But I always came back to the game eventually. Uh, these two cards represent a point after I had gotten out of the Navy and come back to my hometown and reconnected with a group of friends. Same group of friends actually from high school who I used to play Magic with at the lunch table in high school. We'd play we'd play games in lunch period, and whoever could win in 20 minutes was king. So these two cards represent a tournament deck that I created right around 2010. The idea is to take Breon Stoutarm over on the right, and he's a fling with lifelink. So you drop a creature, and as many of you know, for those that don't, you pay 1 red, tap Breon, sacrifice a creature other than Breon, so you can't self-sacrifice. Breon Stoutarm deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to target player. And what was rather unique about him in particular was the lifelink. So he was the one dealing the damage. So Breon Stoutarm deals damage equal to. So because of the lifelink, you get that life. So whatever damage he does, you get that back. Then at the time, elementals were a theme in, sorry about that little movement, were a theme in several of the sets in that block. So blocks were kind of a thing at that point. So elementals were a thing. So the Supreme Exemplar over on the left was a flying 10/10 for 6 in a blue, which had an ability that said champion an elemental, which was when this creature comes into play, sacrifice it unless you remove another elemental you control from the game, and then when this elemental leaves play, that card returns to play. So the deck overall is filled with many elementals and other creatures to drop elementals from your hand, recur elementals from your graveyard. So essentially, it's a combo deck to take something like the Supreme Exemplar here, drop it down for 1 in a red using the card here, using this guy, the Incandescent Soulstoke. So 1 in a red, tap it. You may put an elemental creature card from your hand into play. That creature gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at end of turn. So with this guy, oh, and they also get +1/+1, by the way. So with this guy, you slam down your Exemplar, have him swing in for 10. After that, take your Breon, flying for 20. There you go, 20 in a turn. So that was the general idea of the combo. There are many general ways to pull it off, ways to recur. So we can use this card, for example, Horde of Notions. 5 color. So 1 of each primary. Vigilance, Trample, Haste. And then again, the Wooburg, 1 of each color. You may play target elemental, and note you do not have to tap this creature when you're using this ability. So if you happen to have 2x of each of those colors, which there's a way to do that in the deck, you could recur 2 things. So you pay the 5, and then you may play target elemental card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. And that's it. Stat line 5/5. So that ability was, to me, insanely strong. There is no restriction. So there's nothing saying you may only do this as a sorcery. You can only do this once a turn. Nothing. No restriction whatsoever. You may play target elemental from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. So your Exemplar here, that costs 7. It's a 10/10. Well, now that's 5. Or maybe we take one of, get my cards over here. Take one of, pardon me, one of these guys. Nova Chaser, Trample, also a champion. It's a little hard, sorry for the folding of the sleeve. 10/2, stat line, Trample. Bring one of those down. Right, because you're not casting any of this, so none of this is counterable. So if these have just wound up in your graveyard, you just bring them right back. You could bring a Revelark back. Then there were some other things in here like Muldrifter, flying. When he comes into play, draw 2, evoke. So instead of paying 4 in a blue to cast it, you could evoke it for 2 in a blue. So you just bring it into play, draw the 2 cards, and then sacrifice them. Shriekmaw, essentially the same idea. It had fear. When he comes into play, destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature. His evoke cost was only 1 in a black. So it was a lot of stuff like that. The whole point was to just kind of blink your deck, build up mana quickly, and then Breon combo out. So this was a deck I ran in a regional tournament. back in somewhere near 2010. I forget the exact year. Um, and at that particular point in time, this this deck, this theme was not popular at all. Um, I remember showing up to the tournament and the judge looked at the list because you had to check in the list at that point, and he thought it was really cool and that everyone was going to be very surprised to see Breon Stoutarm and an elementalist, and he was right. At the time, it was actually pretty close to the same types of decks and colors we have today. Teamer, Dimir Control, White Weenie. So all the same all the same problems we have today. Um, you know, 11, 12 years ago, same thing. And it wasn't like this deck was I, I what someone would call tier 1, tier 2, which for the most part and for most things, for most people, really doesn't matter. By the way, it didn't matter. That wasn't uh, what was important about the deck or about my playing in a tournament. What was important was having fun. I had fun building it. I saw these three cards in particular, and I thought they looked really cool. And I said, let me try to build a deck around that. And again, granted, most people, some people, whatever, I don't know what that proportion is, uh, don't want to build. That's cool. But if you do, there's nothing wrong with that either. And that's a valid way to play. So going back to why do we play? For me, a lot of it is about what can you do and is it fun? If there's a net deck and it looks fun, I'll play it. If I play it and I want to tweak it, I will. If I see some cards that I think are cool, I'll build with them. There's a lot of segmentation about who you are, what you're doing in Magic. And for the most part, that doesn't matter. The question is, are you having fun? Are you getting value out of it? Is it delivering on its promise? And if you watch the video I'll link, that will make sense to you. The promise it's making, as Mark Rosewater explains in his video, is if you sit down with the other players and play this game and do what I tell you to do, being the game rules, you will have fun. If you get up at the end of that game and you don't have fun, you failed as a game designer. Those are his words. Now, obviously, Magic has many more facets and parts than just the strict play of the game. But I take the same overall position. What's fun? Find the fun. Find other people to have fun with. So I built this deck for a tournament, and I came in fifth, I think, overall. Not great, not terrible. I had a lot of surprising upsets. And then I met, like white weenie decks and stuff that was just a little too fast sometimes. A lot of my sideboard at the time was geared towards shutting down blue. Uh, at that particular time, so one of those sideboard cards I had picked. So this is still the deck as it originally was. One of the sideboard cards I had was this guy right here. Guttural Response. Counter target blue instant spell. At the time, there was quite a bit of Temur, Dimir Control, Azorius, Boros. Um, Obviously, Boros doesn't have blue in it, but there were a lot of those primary colors. So I figured that I should cater more towards dealing with blue. So this had several spots in my sideboard, and I had this guy, Eyes of the Wisent. Whenever an opponent plays a blue spell during your turn, you may put a 4/4 green elemental creature token into play. So that played into the elemental theme, and that was a tribal enchantment for 1 and a green. Super cheap. If they countered stuff on my turn, I could make a 4/4, which was nothing to laugh at. I could use that to fling with Brionne. So I had some good answers for blue. Unfortunately, I ran into too much of the white aggro at that particular tournament, and I had a few things to try to deal with that, but not enough. And that unfortunately did me in. But I still had fun. When I was done, what was the most fun to me, and the most fun part of it was um, that I had created a deck that was so surprising. It was fun to see something that was not at all on the meta radar. And at the time, there wasn't really, there was, like MTGO, I think was out at that point, but it wasn't really what MTGA is, clearly, or that would be the primary platform. And the speed of the game from a meta standpoint was entirely different. There's net decking, there were tournaments, but the churn was much slower. Much slower. So you could still come up with something like this, and even though once I got to the tournament, the deck list was open, people could see it, um, they had no idea what most of the cards were. It's like, Breon, stop, what the hell is that? Supreme Exemplar? Huh? Flamekin Harbinger? What are these cards? So half of the matches, most of my opponents were just reading my cards, which was cool to me. So, for why do we play? That's a big part of why I play. To try new things. See what I can do. Doesn't matter if it's necessarily competitive or gonna get me to the top. I mean, everybody dreams of getting to the top, for the most part. But that's not why I play. Why I play is to have fun. And if you're not having fun, why are you doing it? Did not shuffle that enough. So that's my message. That's what I hope you guys take away. You should have fun. You should find people you can have fun with, communities you can have fun with. Our Discord, places like Arena Craft, the Reddits, whatever. Have fun. Experiment. To play queue, direct challenge, historic brawl. Doesn't matter. Have some fun. Try out some new decks. If you don't have a large card count, sometimes it's nice just to hop on a Discord where people are streaming, like I often do, and ask them to spin something up, which we do for people all the time. Hey, can you try this out? I don't have the cards for it. I'm curious if it'll work. That can be fun too. Let's see how this looks. All right. Play out a placeholder reflecting pool because I pulled them out and I didn't feel like finding them. My imaginary opponent does nothing. I will play out a mountain. You can even shadow play. So let's move this guy here back to the normal. Kind of normal. Oof, that is bright. Let me change that. I bring this guy close. I'm sure. Okay, that looks ridiculous. Jeez. Sorry. All right. So obviously I have the resolution and frames per second cranked, so you can see the cards better. So it's a little out of sync. It's not your playback. Um, this is probably wrong. I'm probably not going to cut this part out because the whole point of this is about getting back to and into the real. And MTGA, again, it's a nice vehicle for this game that we love, um, but it doesn't necessarily provide the real. And a lot of the focus elsewhere is on this kind of superficial look at Magic as a game, as far as um, this is if every day has a new top meta mythic deck and whatever ladder climbing deck, uh, I mean, how's that possible? So like they're all riffs on ideas over and over, um, which isn't to say they're not good, but this touches on a different kind of issue with this game and environment, that you're you're enticed into this churn, right? And all of these things are enticed to churn along with it. So you have all of these new people, these new players coming in who are competing on ladder, on whatever. Then you have stuff like MMR, which by explanation takes people of similar skill levels and groups them together. So by that logic, you will have people getting onto the ladder at some point of a similar skill level, which will ladder themselves up until they reach the top. And then the actual top will crush them. And the flood of decks won't work for them, which is why you see spikes of any given deck being released, and then it's popular for a day or a week, depending on how easy it is to use. And that's the problem. Most of these are not actually easy to use, especially if you are newer to the game. You don't have a lot of rules knowledge, familiarity with the kind of the vagaries of interaction between permanents, spells, the stack. Um, Without those nuances and timings and tempos, a lot of these decks on the surface seem straightforward. But first of all, no deck is. And second of all, if the game was that simple, it would have died a long time ago. Um, so it's kind of ridiculous to think that there could be this many amazing new things, but also be incredibly easy to pick up that anybody could do it, and that also it's nigh unbeatable. So you have all these people, environment kind of funneling that churn, and many of them don't know where to start with deck building, how to start, when they even when they net deck, what they're net decking into is actually a very complicated idea. Even, you look at the Eldraine era technical current standard, mono red, that's not a brain dead deck. There are no brain dead decks in Magic. I know that's something people say a lot because it makes you feel better, but that's not true. To to actually be at the top, there is nothing brain dead about the game. So it's even stuff like that that unfortunately gives everyone the impression that, well, it should be easy. You didn't you didn't win, you didn't get into diamond in a few days, you didn't get to mythic in a few days, you didn't get numbers. Well, you're terrible. You need to net deck better. You need to whatever. Like, no, the discussion needs to change, and maybe you don't need to be in the ladder in the first place. Maybe that actually isn't what would be most fun for these people, but that's really the only thing kind of really positioned in the game. So I'm I'm hoping videos like this, and more we'll keep doing. Um, our first something different that you guys enjoy. If that's true, please subscribe, hit like, find us on Discord, website, um, and if those things are true, you do like it. Um, it helps give some people, and so far, there's been a few that have reached out to me and kind of given the sentiment that there isn't anyone really speaking for them about these things. So I know this video is really um, not about deck building, or obviously there's no real gameplay or anything. So it's a really off kind of video. Uh, but I felt it was important to explain how I'm thinking about the game, where I'm coming from, even if only a few of you actually watch some, most, all of this video. Um, because I've always believed you need to be true to yourself. You need to own uh, your mistakes, your successes, yourself. And I wouldn't be doing myself or those I claim to want to be helping justice if I didn't explain what and why, kind of where I came from, a little bit at least, in this game, and what I believe I see at the moment, and what I hope we could accomplish or change. So that's my attempt with this video. And going forward, we might have some videos that are discussions. We'll obviously have more brew videos and um, gameplay videos, tournament videos when they come up. So lots of variety planned. I just felt that this was important to get out as a topic, and hope you again enjoy. Have an excellent day wherever you are, and see you again soon. Thanks.